welcome back to Restore and Plant Podcast with me, your host, Jack Cole. So this week I'm joined by Katy Williams down in the Cape, who works for the Cape Leopards Trust. So Katy, welcome. Thank you for your
Thank you.
time. And start by telling us a little bit about your background and how it is that you came to work for the trust and what it is that you get up to day to day.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I'm the Research and Conservation Director at the Cape Leopard Trust. I've been with the organization now for about 4 years, but I'm certainly not new in this part of the world or this part of my sort of ecological work as well. So I'm originally from the UK, actually, but I've been living in Southern Africa now for about 15 years. And I've been leading projects and conducting research on large carnivores in Zimbabwe and in South Africa. So I've done quite a bit of work on leopards and on cheetahs, and I did a PhD on brown hyenas. So I really got myself quite interested in the large carnivores. And, I think the thing is with these type of species, they are they're the top of the food chain, but they're so vulnerable and they're so important to our ecosystem. And they're these species that people either really love or really hate often. So I've got myself a bit of a soft spot for them. So it's been a real nice opportunity to come and work for the Cape Leopard Trust for the past few years. And in my role now, I'm managing a team who lead on all the research for the trust. So we do a lot of things like population monitoring, looking at what's happening with numbers for the leopards and trying to understand the threats to them in this part of the world. And then I also run the conservation work for the trust as well. So we very much lead our conservation work based on our research. So research findings really impact on the strategies we need to put in place. And we're always trying to come up with creative and innovative ways to engage with communities and come up with new conservation approaches that are really going to resonate with them and work for them. So it's quite an exciting position that I have the diversity of doing the science, but also getting to go and see the people and create ideas and sort of projects with them as well. So it's a really nice opportunity to do a number of different things to help leopards in the Cape.
Fantastic. Oh, brilliant. Okay. Now, the first thing to get out of the way, Katy, is you work for the Cape Leopards Trust, but technically they are the leopards of the Cape, is how we refer to them. Would you mind just explain that a little bit and then going into about the leopard itself, a bit of ecology, lifespan, population numbers, and some of the ideas that you just mentioned there? A bit of an overview for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So here in the Western Cape of South Africa, where our organization is based, we're looking to protect the leopards that are here. And these are actually a really special leopard because they are essentially the last member of the big five down in this part of the world. So if you look back quite a few years, so, before the Europeans arrived down in South Africa, there used to be sort of a lot more megafauna down here. So we would have lions and elephants all down around Cape Town area. But then with the Europeans arriving around the middle of the 17th century, things started to change and persecution increased. And unfortunately, a lot of these species failed to continue to survive down here. But the leopard is a survivor, and he's the last one of our sort of big cats that are left down here. And it's a really sort of a nice story of how an animal has been able to persist in a landscape that is so developed by humans. And the reason for that is that leopards themselves are extremely adaptable. And they're also very secretive as well. And I think this especially goes for leopards in this part of the world. So here in the Cape of South Africa, the leopards here are actually smaller than the ones you'll find in other parts of South Africa. So if you were going up north, up to Kruger, for example, you can get fairly large leopards there. So your males there will be about 60, 65 kgs. Well, down here in the Cape, they're about half that size. So they're only 30 to 35 kgs, your males. So they're physically smaller, and they're occurring at a much lower density as well. So there's less of them. So they are like this elusive ghost down here, essentially. But they've managed to persist. And it's a real amazing situation because there was many centuries of persecution where they were seen as vermin or problem animals. And, up until sort of the middle of last century, so around the 1960s, there was even like bounties on their heads to try and get rid of leopards down in this part of the country. That's how vehemently people didn't like them. But then, things have started to change, thank goodness. And, towards the end of the last century, research started to really be conducted on these leopards down here. And we started to learn about where they live and how many of them there are, and started to really understand their ecological value within this space as well. And it really brought on an era of starting to instill pride in the people here about leopards persisting and starting to find ways to live with leopards as well, to coexist, to encourage farmers to find strategies to protect their livestock so that leopards can also live on agricultural land. And the Cape Leopard Trust has been quite a big part of that movement. So we've worked quite strongly with the government and other conservation organizations and communities since the trust was established in 2004 to try and protect leopards. But that doesn't mean that everything is rosy for them now. It's still a tough landscape for leopards down here. We've got quite high numbers of human populations, especially right up against some of our protected areas. And the population is actually growing in this part of South Africa, with a lot of people moving down to the Western Cape. So that means that there's a lot of potential for conflict with leopards as we're sort of taking over land that they used to roam in. So we really need to find ways to protect the land that is available and to extend it and to ensure connectivity for them with the remaining landscape so they can continue to move. And we are also very much aware of some of the threats that are emerging in the landscape. So it might even be things that, many people aren't aware of. So, for example, one of the threats that we've detected for leopards is hunting with snares. So this is a kind of quite a basic form of hunting. It's like a wire loop that's set up to catch normally things like small antelope or porcupine. And these animals are often caught for eating, for the pot. But what we've found is that leopards are also getting caught in the snares. And also the animals that are being caught by them are exactly what the leopards are consuming. So the leopards here in the Cape are very much eating those small antelope, porcupine. They're a key part of their diet, along with things like dassies as well. So they're having to deal with prey depletion as a result of these things. So, there's a lot of challenges for them amongst our growing population, but a lot of hope as well. So, as I think they've got a lot more attention in terms of their prevalence in this area, we've got a lot more people who are caring about them as well. So, yeah, it's been a crazy sort of journey for leopards in the Cape, but they're still here, unlike some of the other species, and it's really important that we keep it that way.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Okay. And do you have a rough idea of how many there are? And how long do they live for as well?
Yeah, so it's extremely hard to come up with
Of
a
course.
accurate estimate on these sort of animals because they are so difficult to study. So the only way we can really even find out any information on them is with camera traps. We don't see them. They're pretty much elusive in the landscape. So with our camera trapping methods, we set up very large grids, and we're able to observe individuals and run density analysis to check on populations. So within our certain focal areas, we're able to look at how many leopards we have in these areas and what's happening with the population. So we re-monitor areas every few years to see if the population is stable or not in some of the core areas that we work in. It's a trend that we're just starting to establish. It takes many years to get a good sort of look as to what's happening to these populations over time. But in the areas that we've been looking at, we've had some pretty positive news that some of our study sites are looking pretty stable. So that's good news. But it is important to say that the leopard population here in the Cape just in its essence is much lower than in other parts of South Africa. So, for example, most of our density estimates, where we're looking at how many leopards we have in certain large areas, we tend to be looking at about 1 to 1.5 leopards per 100 square kilometers. It depends on the study site. Well, if you estimate leopard numbers in other parts of South Africa, so if you go up further north, for example, into more sort of protected landscapes with more prey availability and possibly less threats, you're dealing with density estimates that are much higher, so sometimes 10 times higher than what we get here in the Cape. So yeah, we have a much lower estimate overall. And basically here in the Cape, although we can't give a definite number as to how many individuals are down here, we are pretty confident it is less than 1,000 individuals in this part of the country in the Cape. So, so yeah, there's very few sort of strongholds for them, and we've got to make sure that those are protected and remain connected. You also asked about lifespan as well. So it is pretty tough out there. So there's a lot of threats, not just from anthropogenic sources, but also natural ones as well. The males will fight each other for territory. And generally, we're talking about roughly 12-ish years for leopard survival. But we do know that because of some of these threats that we're putting into the landscape, it can be a lot less than that. And we're losing much younger ones as they're moving through our systems, through roads and these landscapes that have snares and things like that.
Okay. Right. So now tell us a little bit more of sort of the day-to-day that the trust is, sort of the work that you are involved with. You mentioned that you work with communities, lots of reach out, sort of advocacy. Yeah, so just tell us a little bit more about what it is that you're sort of doing on the ground with these leopards.
Yeah, so we basically use the leopard as an umbrella species or a flagship species for wider biodiversity. So, although we are called the Cape Leopards Trust, we're not only about leopards. We need to protect all of the landscapes and all of the prey that they might utilize, not just for leopard survival, but for all of our survival, for human survival. We need that balance in the landscape. So we really use the leopards to get people inspired and excited about conservation in general. And we have three main areas we kind of delve into as part of the trust. So our three goals are research, conservation, and education. So we really see these as our pillars of our work and absolutely fundamental to make a change on the ground. So research is very much a starting point for everything. We need to understand the ecology of the leopards. We need to understand the threat so that we can come up with strategies to protect them. And we do very rigorous monitoring and surveys of landscapes and populations to be able to come up with scientifically sound results on the leopards. And we're also working collaboratively, often with other organizations and universities for our research results. And then our conservation work, we have quite diverse programs, so some of which are working with farmers and some of which are working with communities to remove some of the threats, and some we're looking to a larger, more broad scale level as well. So trying to move into stewardship, for example, for landscapes and working with partners to try and protect areas that need conservation protection for the future for leopards and other species. So quite a wide array of conservation projects. And then the education team is working again with all sorts of different players within the landscape. We often focus quite a lot on young people because they really are the next generation of conservationists. So doing a lot of work with schools, lessons with them about leopards, but also about ecological services and different environmental factors as well. And then taking kids out into the environment as well. So taking them on camp to go see the wild spaces that leopards go and move in. And that's really important to not just sort of improve their knowledge, but also to capture their heart as well for these important landscapes. Our education team's also doing a lot of nice work to try and inspire the next generation of people moving into conservation careers as well. So especially trying to inspire young women to consider careers in science and get access to them, because often that's maybe not something they're aware of as they go through their school career, that these opportunities exist, and we need more young conservationists to be coming out of the Cape and to be wanting to protect their own landscape. So we've got these diverse pillars of our work, a number of different projects, and like I said, it's not just about protecting the leopards. We're in the Cape Floristic region here, which is actually one of the top biodiversity hotspots in the world. And we've got over 9,000 plant species here, with about 2/3 of them being endemic. So, it's not just about protecting the leopards. We've got to protect our amazing biodiversity here. And the leopard's just an amazing tool to help us to do that. So we really sort of grasp onto its sort of flagship species elements to try and get people engaged with everything.
What's going on? Brilliant, brilliant. Now, Katie, tell me a little bit about some of your own personal experiences, perhaps out there with the leopards, some of the interactions that you might have had, or some real sort of core memories that really sort of given you sort of clear inspiration and experiences that you've had.
Yeah, so here in the Cape, like I mentioned, it's very rare to get to see a leopard here. So unfortunately, I don't have any sort of face-to-face moments down here. But in a previous role that I had, I was working up in Limpopo, which is northern South Africa. And I got to do a lot more hands-on work with leopards there. So we did some collaring, for example, and that really sort of helped to spark this passion for leopards. And I think one of the things that sort of inspired me towards this conservation pathway is very much linked to my my collaring work up there. Is we ended up putting GPS collars on about 8 different individuals, adult leopards, and these collars were drop-off collars, so they fall off after about a year. So you get all this amazing data, where do your leopards move, and all this information about how fast they move, and all this exciting stuff for about a year. And then you've got a nice data base to play with. And what we found was that in this year, when we had all these individual collared, we had this huge mortality of leopards. And what was happening up there, so this was an area that wasn't part of a protected area. It was a landscape that had some agricultural spaces in it, some ranches, all sorts of sort of different properties within it. And a large proportion of these collared leopards were getting caught in these snares and these hunting devices that were being set for food, basically, so for antelopes and things like that. And the leopards were getting caught in them by the waist or around the foot or around the neck, and they were unable to get the snares off of them. So they would either die at the anchor point, or they would be able to pull away from the anchor, and then the snare, it causes infection, or they're unable to hunt. So out of these 8 leopards that we collared, within a year, about 4 of them, about half of them were killed by snares. And it just absolutely resonated with me that this is like this unseen killer that is in our landscapes across the whole of Africa. It's not just a South Africa thing. It's actually a huge problem even in Southeast Asia, snaring as well, and many places. But it's like a silent killer that, these animals are getting caught in them. They are dying these horrific deaths in them. And people just really weren't even knowing about it, and were very ignorant about the fact that this was a serious threat within the landscape. So that piece of collaring work that I did really opened my eyes to the fact that, we have a major issue in this country with snares killing leopards and other big predators, because I also had camera traps out, and I was seeing brown hyenas with snares around them, and all sorts as well. And then, a bit later on, I saw that the Cape Leopard Trust was becoming very aware down here in the Western Cape of the snaring problem. They were starting to do some research down here, doing interviews with people about the drivers of snaring within the sort of winelands area. And they were starting to try and quantify it and understand it. And that was one of the first organizations I ever saw that was sort of going out there and trying to understand snaring and sort of unveil what's going on with it. And that really inspired me to come and work for the Cape Leopard Trust, because I'd had this sort of personal experience with leopards that I'd interacted with dying in this way. And then when I saw the organization, the Cape Leopard Trust, was sort of being very much at the forefront of trying to solve this complex problem, that really pushed me in their direction. And that's something that I'm extremely passionate about. And you know, as I've grown into my role here, it's a project that I've been pushing forward. We've been doing a lot more research on snaring in this area. And we actually launched the Western Cape Snare Response Plan last year. So it's a kind of a way for, if anyone finds snares on their property or animals caught in snares, it's a system, a coordinated system amongst multiple stakeholders to gather data and get help to those animals as soon as possible. So I've really taken my on the ground unexpected experience and very sad experience with leopards being killed in this way. And I feel like I've been able to transition it into something positive through this role down here and be able to take it to the next level through our work. So yeah, that's just a little personal story
No,
about
it's fantastic. Thank
my
you so much.
passion,
Really interesting. Yeah,
for a
absolutely.
really sort of, I think, untalked about issue that I think is now finally starting to get the attention that it deserves. A lot more papers are now coming out about snaring and what we can do about it.
Good. And on that, so how do you see things trending for leopards in the coming years? And what would you like to see?
Yeah, so I've seen a lot more papers and information coming out recently about the importance of corridors, wildlife corridors for species, but especially large carnivores. And I think this is such an exciting time. It's work that is absolutely invaluable. We really need to be thinking on this broad scale about movement and connectivity to make sure that we don't end up with a system where animals become inbred or they can't find mates or prey. They need this ability to move. So that's a trend that I'm really excited about. So, and something that the Cape Leopard Trust is really passionate about and starting to get quite involved about is starting to think about corridors and connectivity and modeling them and thinking to the future about protecting these spaces. So that's definitely one thing. And then another trend that I'm also loving is I'm seeing a lot more conservation projects trying to collaborate. So I think maybe in some cases previously NGOs kind of worked alone, and it's hard out there, and there's so many challenges, and funding is so difficult to get, and all these things are tough. But what can make it so much more effective is if different conservation organizations can come together, bring their skills, bring their knowledge, bring their tools together, and we can all work together as a team towards conservation. And I've seen that happening a lot more in recent years. I've seen a lot more sort of partnership projects. And this is a really important thing, especially when you're trying to tackle complex challenges, because most of the time when you are dealing with human wildlife conflict, it's so complicated. It's got multiple sides. You're dealing with issues like poverty and unemployment that sometimes add on to it. It's so difficult because you need to be an expert in all sorts of things, in biology, in social sciences, in financial management, in communication. You need to have all these skills to deal with these difficult issues that basically are at the crux of these problems. And if we can all collaborate and we can bring different skills that I have and that another organization has, and we can work together, we're going to be able to tackle these things from all the sides, and we're going to be able to find a way forward. So I'm really passionate about that. Last year, the Cape Leopard Trust was one of the partners who came together to lead the Global Leopard Conference. It was an inaugural event where we had all sorts of researchers and conservation organizations and governments come together to talk about all the leopard subspecies across the world and to share our research. We had 5 days of knowledge sharing. It was awesome. And that's what collaboration needs to be. We need to all be communicating and chatting and finding the ways forward. So that's something that really excites me, and I think is just going to get better if we open ourselves to it.
Wonderful. And finally, Katie, for those listening who would like to support your work or find out more about the work that oh, sorry, your work and more generally support you in whatever ways they can, find out information, where can they find you?
So our website is capeleopard.org.za. So go have a look at it, check it out. And you can also find us on all the different social medias as well. So Facebook, Instagram, X, LinkedIn, we're there. We put up a lot of nice posts. And we've also got a pretty full YouTube channel as well with lots of videos. And a lot of our sort of environmental education resources are on the YouTube channel as well. So nice things for young people to engage with as well.
Katie, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.